For any sort of data analysis, we need to have a refined data set. We often work with large and complex data set, which can be confusing. In such scenarios, data filtering is quite useful to refine the data and remove the extra information that is not required for our analysis. So in today's session, we are going to learn about different types of filter used in Tableau. Having said that, let's get started. Welcome back, this is Gurpreet from DataViz Canvas, and today we are here to learn about Tableau filters. So what are filters? The primary role of filter is to narrow down the data. Well, it helps us to create a subset of the data based on one or more conditions. So in simple terms, filters are used basically to remove the unwanted data from our data set. So we can do our analysis on a particular information or a particular data which we need. So in Tableau, there are basically 5 types of filter: extract filters, data source filters, context filters, dimension filters, and measure filters. So let's jump into extract filters and understand what are those. So extract filters are used to filter the extracted data from the data source. So this filter is utilized only if user extracts the data from the data source. And during the extraction of the data, Tableau allows you to add a filter condition to one or more columns which are extracted from the data source. So you could filter out the columns based on the whole column or the values within the column. So when you create an extract filter, a similar dialog box will pop up where you will have an option to add the filter criteria. So here we have an add button. When we click on this add button, you can see a lot of different dimensions where you can add one or multiple dimensions and create your own criteria by adding the values of the dimension. And once you add that, then simply we have to click extract, and all the data which we had initially will be extracted based on those conditions. So let's see how it is done in Tableau Desktop. So in this scenario, we are using sample superstore dataset, and we simply right click on this dataset and go to extract data. But before I do that, let me bring number of records in this particular dataset. So I simply want to see, like, let's say customer names, right? So I will bring customer names into the row shelf and add all the members. And let's say I want to change the measure and I want to see count, and I will simply change it to text, and we have 9,994 customers, right? And I want to now create an extract filter where I want to see the customers based on the region. So I will right click on that and I will go to extract data, and once I go there, you will see that extract data window, and here I will simply add a filter condition, and I will go to region and I will click on that, and it will give me all the regions which are available in this data set. So let's say I want to just select Central and East region. I will select that and click OK. You can add multiple extract condition. If I want to say I want to select a manufacturer or product or even a category, so I can do that, and I will go to the category and select furniture and office and click OK. So now I have 2 extract conditions which will filter down the data at the extraction level. So I will simply click that and I will click extract, and it will extract the information including these filter conditions. And also in this extraction data, we have an aggregation data for visible dimension. So in some scenarios, we get the data at daily level, and in our analysis, let's say we don't want to see the data at daily level, we'd want to do our analysis on monthly basis. So we can simply select this condition, aggregate the data for visible dimension, then we want the date to be rolled up to, let's say, month. So then all the rows in the in the data set will be rolled up to months, and all the measure values will be aggregated at that level. So that's another thing which we can do while extracting the data. And after that, you will see number of rows where we can select the incremental refresh. So if your data is changing every day, and every day we are adding new rows rather than changing or updating the existing historical rows, then you can set up this incremental refresh. So every day, instead of reloading the entire data set, which might be billion or trillion of rows, you can increment the new rows added into that data set by setting up the incremental refresh. So that can be done here as well. So you can select the table to refresh and identify the new rows using this column. So whichever column you have in the data set, you can use it this way. So in this scenario, I don't want it, so I will just uncheck that. And you can also do it by top or sample of orders by number of rows. For different condition, you can use it here for incremental refresh. And at the bottom, you will see hide all unused field. So this can be used like in our data set, we are, let's say, only using 10 or 15 fields, and we don't want to use all the other 50 columns, 50 fields. So I can just simply click on this, hide all the unused fields. So at data extraction level, it will only extract the fields which we are using. So the extraction process will be really quick and fast. So that will be really helpful. So let's simply use these conditions here and click extract, and you will see that will once the data is extracted, because we are only extracting the data for those conditions. So now you can see it's 4,216 rows. So that's basically an extract filter. Let's move on to our next filter, which is data source filter. Data source filter is applied after extracting the data. And it's as simple as that. Like once the data is extracted, we just apply data source filter. And you might be wondering, what is the difference between data extract filter and data source filter then? The basic difference is like when we are trying to publish a data source on a server or on Tableau Online for our self-service analytics, we try to publish the data source without any filters by department or anything. We just try to publish the data for, let's say, last 5 years, which might be used across multiple departments. So we publish that data source and we apply simply extract filter on, let's say, sales data or something. And then once the data is published, then individual different users can apply these data source filters, so that can be used in one dashboard at multiple places. So that's where we can use the data source filter to reduce the number of data in a data set. So how it is applied? As you can see here on this snapshot, we simply right click on the sample superstore data set and go to edit data source filter. So once we click on that, a pop-up window will appear and we can add the filters. So let's see how it is done. So in this particular data set, I will simply go to sample superstore data set, right click on that and click on edit data source filter. So right now there is no data source filter applied to this data set. We can simply add it, select a country or region or any manufacturer and select whichever we want. So you can select multiple or all, whichever way you want it, you can select that and click OK. So that way your data source filter can be applied, and you can add multiple data source filters if required. And another way to add a data source filter is by simply right clicking and go to edit data source page. So it says field region which is included for the filter doesn't exist. So something wrong there, that's fine. We simply go to this window and see here, this is the place where we can select data source filter as well. You simply click edit on it and you will see data source filters are here. So you can, this is the one which we recently added. Let's say I don't want it, I will simply remove it. And this edit filter is the extract filter, which we saw before. So this is where we can apply the data extract filter. We can go through multiple places. So let's go back to the sheet. So now we have learned about data extract filter and data source filter. Now let's move on to our next filter, which is dimension filter. So this is quite useful, and you might come across this scenario where you have used multiple dimension filters, and it's quite powerful actually. So what are dimension filters? So as you know, dimensions in Tableau are fields that are independent, typically any field that contain categorical or qualitative information. So filters applied on such dimensional data are called dimension filters. So you can choose any of the dimension listed by Tableau for your data. Just drag them to the filter shelf. The member or the values of the dimensions are displayed, as you can see here, furniture and office supplies. So you can choose from the selected list, or you can use a wildcard selection or any condition or top values for your data set. So let's see how we can do that. So in this scenario, let's start from the beginning. Let's clean it up. Let's say I want to see the sales of all the subcategories, but I want to bring particular subcategories. I want to filter it out. So I will drag subcategories into filter shelf, and this pop-up window will appear. And you can see here we have multiple options to select from, and I will select all of them. And on the top you will see we have another option, wildcard. So you can go there and allow the user to give an option where they can simply type in the word, and you can select either it contains those values, or it starts with that value, ends with that value, or I want exact match. So you can give that option to the user where they can simply type in the word based on the wildcard selection. You can also use a condition where you can give the condition by a particular field. You can say if the sum of sales are greater than or equal to this one, or simply greater than a particular value, and then it will give you all the subcategories based on that condition where sales are greater than a particular number. Or you can also use your own formula here, where you can say simply sum of sales is greater than 1 million, let's say. So you can use that as well. So I will use none in this case. And also you can use the top calculation, where you can see I want to see all the top subcategories by sum of sales, and it will give me top 10 subcategories. So that way you can select. So I will simply go to the general one, and I will select none for all others, and I will go to general and select all of them. And once we have that dimension filter in the filter shelf, you can click on this value and say show filter. So what it will do is it will give you that filter option on the right hand side, where you can select the one which you need and uncheck the one which you don't need. So that way you can select all of them. Then if you select this drop down icon on the filter shelf, you will see all these filter conditions, which are quite useful actually, and quite handy for our day-to-day operational work. So you can see here this filter selection can be based on a single value list. So when you select that, it will give you all the radio buttons, and you can use that for your selection purpose. And also you can use a single value drop down. So this is quite useful if you have less space on your dashboard, and you can select a single value, and it will help you to save your space on the dashboard. And also you can use a single value slider, where you can go to the next value based on the slider selection. And also you can go based on the multiple value list, and you can select multiple values. And then the next one is multiple value drop down, where you can select multiple values using a drop down value. And then after that we can create our multiple value custom list. So if you want to create a list for yourself, let's say you want art, you can simply go there and add art. You can say appliances, and you can add that as well. So that way you can create all these values. If you don't want to use all the values in the data field, you want to create your own list, you can do that as well. And then we have a wildcard match, where you can just say I want anything which starts with AR and press enter. It will give you the matching subcategory for that. And then in addition to that, we have some format filter and set controls here as well. So you can go there and you can format all the values here as well based on the color, alignment or shading. And also you can go, another value here is to simply do the relevant values. So what do we mean by relevant values? So this is the cascading effect of filters, which is quite useful. So let me show you the categories. Let's bring it here, and let's bring categories into the filter shelf as well, and let's show category filters as well, and let me do it as a multiple value drop down. So let's say I am just selecting furniture, and when I go to subcategory, and I will change it to multiple value drop down as well, and we have already selected here all values showing in the hierarchy, it's showing that. And if I do all values in the database, and then if you see, it is showing me all the values irrespective of it's furniture or not. It's showing me storage and appliances as well, which are not part of furniture. So in that case, we need only relevant values or all values in the hierarchy. So if I go all values in the hierarchy, it will only show me these 4 subcategories. And the same thing we can do it by using only relevant values, and it will give me all the relevant values for that furniture category. So this shows the cascading effect. If we have all the values in the database, it can be confusing for the user to select which category they want. So that is the cascading effect of filters, and these are the dimension filters. Now let's move on to next filter, which is measure filter. So what are measure filters? Measure filters are those which are applied to a measure field, are called measure filters. So these are typically the fields that contains quantitative values. And to add the measure filter, we simply need to drag the measure fields into the filter shelf, and you will see a window appear where you can select the values. So let's see in Tableau how we can do that. So let me remove these filters, and you will see all the sales for subcategories here. And let me bring sales into the filter shelf. And when you bring it here, you will see sum of sales is appearing. When you click on that, it will open a pop-up window which will actually show you the option where you can select all values, or you can select aggregated values based on sum, average, median, count, distinct, or you can select based on standard deviation or just as an attribute. So let's say in this case we select sum of sales. We click on that and it will give you an option to select from a range of values. So you can actually give a range from this point, like this $1,500 to $181,000. So you can select a range, or you can say I just want sales greater than, let's say, 100,000. So you can do it that way as well, and if you apply, it will give you only those sales. Or you can do it at most, and you can also do it based on the special values. So if you have some null values, you can go here and say show me all the non-null values. So that way you can do that, and if you want to reset it, simply click on that and it will reset to the original filter values. And as I mentioned, in this case, let's try at most I want 100,000 sales. If I click on OK, it will give me all the subcategories where sales is less than 100,000. So that's how we can use the measure filter. So let's move on to the next type of filter, which is called context filter. So context filter are used to improve the performance of the views, filters, queries run on the data sources. All filters by default are applied independent to any other filter in Tableau, which means each filter accesses the entire dataset without regard to any other filters. Well, this context filters can be applied to change this behavior. You can have context filter that is run before any other filters, and the rest of the filters or any other calculations are applied on top of the data which we get after applying context filter. So what do we mean by context filter in simple terms? So let's assume we have 1000 rows in our data set. And we applied a context filter and we only get 20 rows. So all other calculation filters are computed on those 20 rows rather than on 1000 rows. So this normally helps us to improve the performance of the dashboard. And how we can create it? Let's go to Tableau desktop and try it. So let's say we are showing sales by subcategories, and I want to see top 10 subcategories by sales. So let's say I want top 3. All right, so top 3 subcategories by sum of sales. I will click OK. So you will see we have binders, chairs, and storage overall based on our data set. Now I want to bring category and bring it into filter shelf, and I want to see top 3 subcategories in furniture. So I will click on furniture and press OK. So just notice on this subcategory thing. So you have binder, chair, and storage, right? And when we click on furniture, we will only get chairs. So out of binders, chairs, and storage, we only get chairs. So basically it's showing for furniture subcategory, there is only chairs category which is in top 3 out of the all categories. So that's what is happening, but that's not what we need. We want to see top 3 subcategories in furniture. So this is happening because our top 3 filter is calculated first and then we applied our category filter. So this is running first and then we are applying this, but we want to change the order. So we will simply click on this and say add to context, and notice on the color changes and the position of this category filter. So when we click add to context, it moves at the top and the color changes to gray. And when we do that, so it first filter out the data for furniture, which is now giving bookcase, chairs, and table, and then it applies the top 3 subcategory logic on top of it. So that's how context filters work. And as a best practice, it's always recommended that apply the context filter where your data set is reduced by like at least 60 to 70%. If we don't do that, then it might have an adverse effect and it might degrade the performance as well if we are working with the really big data sets. So that's about context filters. And I will quickly go through this order of operation. So that is really important when we talk about filters. So extract filters runs at number 1 and then followed by data source filters, then context filters. And after that, all the set conditional filters, top 10 and fixed LODs run. So when we were looking at the previous example with top 10 or top 3, it was running first and then the dimension filter was running. But we wanted the order to be different. So we converted the dimension filter into context filter so that it runs first and then the top n values are run. So after context filter, then we have dimension filters, and after that we have include, exclude, LODs, and data blending. And after that we run measure filters, and then we have forecast, table calculation, clusters, and totals. And then we have table calc filters. And at the end we have trend lines and reference line. So this is the order of operation which we should always follow and make sure that our filters are in the order based on the result what we want. I hope you guys enjoyed this session, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment in the section below, and we'll see you in the next session. Thank you.